So requests I've gotten over like the past 2 years off and on was to update or delete or talk about my older videos from 2014 labeled Why Nikon Sucks, Why Canon Sucks. They were very dramatic titles for when I really kind of just started concentrating on my channel earlier 2014. But I did have a lot of thoughts then as a Nikon user then. I was a Nikon D700 owner, and I am the Nikon D7000, which filmed those videos. I had a lot of thoughts. I also did a lot with the Canon line. Professionally freelancing, we used the 5D Mark II mainly and a 5D Mark III with a couple of the production companies that I was with. So in 2019, I wanted to take a look back, take the couple points that I had from each video and see how we've, grown Nikon and Canon wise, because once again, that was really only concentrated then. Sony wasn't as big as them, obviously, as they are now in 2019. And did Nikon and Canon improve since then, or are they still kind of slacking behind now that they're obviously in mirrorless? So I'm going to put both videos down in the description below, maybe in a pinned post. So if you want to go watch those specifically and you hear a little bit more in thoughts and to see from 2014, definitely go check those out. But here are the main points from those. I'm going to start on the Nikon side of things. The first complaint I talked about was their autofocusing on the photo side of things was bad. And this was mainly the D7000, D7100 line. And there was a lot of issues with back focusing. And I had the D7000 and it is one of the worst cameras. It's one of the best and worst cameras I ever owned because I really liked the feel of it. I didn't mind it being crop and everything at the time. It provided great video, affordability for what it was, but it back focused like crazy. The D7100 was obviously the upgrade. It helped a little, but that also had back focusing issues. But how is that nowadays? Well, you have the D750 now. You have the D850, which is pretty much the best DSLR made, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. So there's that being said. You also have now the Z6 and Z7. The Z6 is actually, we know what that was, a little bit of letdown for people, but it's actually a pretty decent camera. But you have the Z6 and Z7 now in 2019. Z6 is selling pretty decently for Nikon as well, so that's a great thing. The only thing still from that video to this one is the video autofocusing. Nikon still hasn't necessarily crushed it, but they have improved it a ton, and really only with the Z6, actually. So the Z6, you've seen it still hunts a little bit, but it's actually a bit smoother than they've pretty much ever done. The D850 brought a lot in, but the Z6, has done a lot. That was the first point, and they've definitely stepped it up since 5 years ago, finally. Number two, Nikon's prices suck compared to Canon. Mainly, I was talking about lens-wise, the 50mm lenses, and in 2019, I don't know if that's the case. I think they're either even, and if anything, maybe Canon's a little bit more expensive, because once again, the D850 is a very affordable price for what it is. The Z6 is $2,000 for the body. The Z7, it is what it is. That's a little bit more expensive. But you have the Canon 5D Mark IV, which is older technology, one of my favorite cameras. I really enjoyed using it. But that's over $3,000. You have the Canon EOS R, which is over $2,000, around $2,400. So that being said, I don't know if that's the case. You've got very expensive lenses still, so I think if anything, they're kind of even, and maybe Canon at this point is a little bit more expensive. But I mean, the lenses for either of their mirrorless line are price-wise. Number three, Nikon doesn't have as good as video options compared to Canon. Well, that's also true. Back then, Nikon really didn't even know how to put 60 frames per second at shooting, full HD at 1080p. That being said, now that's more common, which is great. But now you have Canon kind of crippling their cameras now, kind of pulling a Nikon and not caring so much. And definitely not caring about 4K if you care about it. But that being said, I'd say Nikon has improved and has made it more standard to at least include 60 frames per second at 1080. But, 120 should be common. Number four, Nikon does not listen to their consumers. Don't update cameras regularly. Well, they went mirrorless. Number five, the XQD card. 2019. Number six, was Nikon trying too hard and putting out some interesting cameras like the Nikon DF? Well, back then I was referring to that as the DF as being kind of a letdown, and it really had no place, and that really kind of stands true. I didn't mind the camera. It was great. I have a review on it if you're really interested about it. I shot a couple weddings with it, but they didn't need that digital fusion camera at all, really. It was way overpriced for what it didn't offer. But you know, now in 2019, they're trying hard. They went mirrorless. You have the Z6, you have the Z7. But once again, there were a little bit of letdowns for some of the features that a lot of people wanted. But once again, the Z6 is pretty good for what it is, and it's doing rather well. So they're trying. Number 7 was the Nikon menu system being worse than Canon. That's still true to this day, in my opinion. You have a little bit more functionality, obviously, with cameras now. It's now 5 years ago. But still, Canon has one of the best menu systems, in my opinion, out there. Like Fuji, I like Fuji too, but that's not really a big deal anymore in 2019, I don't think. But, you know, it's a complaint that people have. Lastly but not leastly is the oil and dust issues that they've had, especially with the D600 and D610. Yeah, there were some oil spots on those. They had big recalls for them. So, that was then. You don't hear about any of that anymore. So, that's luckily gone. So, that was a lot of the complaints from Nikon. They've improved a lot. It is 5 years ago. But they still are really trying hard and really aren't listening a ton. Like, they're like, okay, we'll go mirrorless. We're not going to necessarily give you everything you want. We'll just leave you biting for more there. And we know you're going to give us crud for it. Canon, we're going to approach this now. And once again, I wasn't using photography-wise a lot of the Canon cameras. I was doing freelance video with the Canon 5D Mark II and 5D Mark III whenever my freelancing partner brought his along. One of the big complaints was light leak issues, and mainly with the 5D Mark III. That was one of the big things. 2019, really haven't heard much about light leak. So I don't really think that that's as big of an issue as it was with that. But that really wasn't as big of an issue in my opinion either. Number 2 was dead pixels burning on the screen and everything like that. Mainly with the Canon 5D Mark II that was a big thing. But, you know, obviously that was popular then. Now, they don't have those issues. But that was a big thing back then. You were getting a little bit less quality in your camera. But yet again, the 5D Mark II was obviously aging. You had the Mark III, which improved on a little bit. But that was still an issue, and that happened more with Canon than a lot of the other things out there. And this one I think is hysterical at number 3. Canon camera overheating shooting HD with the 5D Mark II. 2017 to 2018, you laughed at Sony, but that was actually an issue back then with Canon in 2014. 2013 was overheating a little bit and making you stop your, using your camera in the middle of like shooting an event or something to let it cool down a little bit. It was a thing, it happened, but, Sony took the brunt of that, over the past few years. Number 4, Canon's crop sensor cameras were very, very bad with low light, especially compared to what Nikon was offering. And you had the Rebel T3 line out there and everything at the time. That was a time where a lot of people were pushing for full frame, but in 2019, especially, the line between quality and ISO, between crop and full frame and even mirrorless, is all pretty blurred at this point, and it really kind of doesn't matter at all. So I think that problem is solved. Number 5 was very, very bad autofocusing issues photography-wise, especially with the Canon 6D. But there was also a need for drastic updates for the 5D Mark III and the 1DX at the time. And I just think that it happens. Nikon had their kerfuffles with recalls, and, Canon had a couple issues back then. But nowadays, it's not an issue. So my final thoughts, do they both still suck in 2019? No. I think that they could still listen to their consumer base a lot more and to really put out cameras that people want, stop crippling their cameras, and to really just put out something people go, I can finally really upgrade to something I've been wanting. That being said, I still don't think that's going to happen. I think that they've now said, people want mirrorless, we're going to go there, regardless of how you feel about DSLRs, which I still like as well. But I mean, I'm pretty much mirrorless at this point, kind of on accident, but the technology is what a lot of people are craving for. Let's give them what they want, I guess. So that's exactly what's out there. The push for mirrorless is still going, and it goes back to a video I made where I said Canon, and in an interview they admitted it, is that they're taking 2019 to solely concentrate on their mirrorless line, especially their mirrorless lenses, and developing them. And no word on Nikon or anything, but that's where we're at right now. How can Canon and Nikon really step up and catch up in the mirrorless game? Because that's the thing now. Mirrorless, are they going to be, you know, around what's already out there and how Sony's been killing it the past few years? We don't know. But do they suck compared to they did in 2014? No, but they still have a couple little issues, you know, that we discuss. But what are your thoughts? Do they still suck in 2019? And did you have any of the issues I mentioned back then as well? Did any of those stick out on the Canon or Nikon side of things? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. And I'm finally glad that I made this video. We can get it over with.